This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.
Welcome aboard. There he is, the man, the myth, the legend.
Big O!
There we go. There we go.
I had to fire this up on the phone. I'm on vacation right now. I'm living resort life. Not doing a speck of work except for you. You are my only obligation. You were the only person that I would even respond to.
Well, thank you, sir.
While we're over here.
That. We are pissed off down here, obviously, because
come on.
Yeah, Drew Rosenhaus was on Pat McAfee, and he said that last year the Packers and the Dolphins were trying to trade for Darren Waller, and it fell through. And we're pissed off because I wanted to remind Dolphin fans, because after that, I started to sit back and I think, and I said, wow, so the Dolphins, the average person is just going to say, wow, the Dolphins were interested in Darren Waller. Okay, great. But what you don't realize is the Dolphins lost a first and a third round pick for tampering with Tom Brady. Well, guess what? This offseason, they had 2 third-round picks. Now they only had one. And they turned one of them into, well, they had 3, I'm sorry. And they turned one of them into Jalen Ramsey. They have one left, but they had to give away another one to the league. So The Giants traded for Darren Waller this offseason. And what did they give up? A third-round pick. So Chris Grier could have picked up and where he left off in those conversations from last offseason leading up to the deadline and picked it up in the offseason, and Miami could have had Jalen Ramsey and Darren Waller for 2 of their third-round picks if it wasn't for their idiot owners interfering.
Yeah, and obviously, I can't say that I'm super excited for Darren Waller as a Giant. I can't say that I've been super excited for Darren Waller over the last couple of years. Availability has been a major issue for Darren Waller. Super talented when he's healthy, but a third round pick, right? Like that's certainly not an extreme cost. You'd probably be able to score. I mean, there's some good tight ends in this draft. You'd probably be able to score like a Sam Laporta.
I'm sure that's what you're going to see in the second and third rounds. There'll be a tackle or a tight end, because that's what they have. They have a second and a third left over. And so I'm pretty sure that that's what you're going to see, those kind of positions there.
Yeah, Sam Laporta is really good out of Iowa. The Notre Dame kid is really good. Like it's relatively deep at tight end. It's an obvious need. And I don't know. I don't want to say that I don't think that you dodged a bullet with Waller or anything like that. I think he's a very good player. But again, availability has just been a major question mark for that guy over Sabino.
Let me ask you something, my man. Evan Ingram.
I love Evan Ingram. Evan Ingram much younger.
But wait a minute. Hold on a second. It's the same shit. He was never available with the Giants. He had a whole bunch of injuries.
He also had some really bad moments with the Giants. But
he was always injured, and that's why they didn't re-sign him. And then he went to Jacksonville, and he kind of figured his body out. And look at the year he ended up having, because we all knew Evan Ingram had a boatload of talent, dude. He can run like the wind. So
these are also guys at very different points in the career arc too. And I feel like Evan Ingram is just sort of the classic tight end story where it's like second team or second contract, really has some things figured out. It's a slow development position, and obviously really went off last year after having he was one of the buzziest players in camp with Trevor Lawrence. You kind of see that thing coming. So not a huge surprise that it went really well for Evan Ingram. And again, little younger. He's also one of those guys who's not fundamentally so different from like what Gesicki was, in that Evan Ingram is just a slot receiver, right?
Yeah.
I always feel this way in fantasy.
I was just comparing the injury history thing.
Sure,
like
for sure.
Of it. Evan had some of that, and he had to kind of overcome it and figure it out. Like a lot of players, man, when they get to this league, they realize how the pounding that you take in this league, and then they have to adjust their eating habits or training habits or whatever it is to kind of make sure they stay healthy.
It's also part of the deal with the position is that this is less true of Evan Ingram, but you're kind of an offensive lineman and a receiver, right? So it's a lot all at once, and it's generally a big jump in responsibility from college to the NFL. So it has always been a slow development spot. When tight ends go off as rookies, which is rare, we really need to take note. Like this, I don't know. I'm off on a tangent now, but the Kyle Pitts development is really not that. It's really not that unusual. This is just what we used to expect from tight ends, right? Like pre-Gronk, Aaron Hernandez, right? Like we wouldn't think anything of it. Like no tight end should be anything until year 3, year 4.
Normally, but we don't have that kind of patience in this world. We're in a microwave society.
Certainly not.
Do you believe this whole thing about Mac Jones being shopped? Because I have a hard time believing anybody wants to even trade for Mac Jones, to be quite honest with you on this one. I know that there's a back and forth going on from one of the Patriot reporters and Pro Football Talk and all of that, because they threw it out there. To me, it doesn't really make sense that there's any kind of a market for Mac Jones. It's almost like you would have to give him away in order to trade him at this point. And I don't think Belichick's going to do something like that. To me, this story doesn't make sense. Your thoughts on that one?
I think there was pretty clearly a fair amount of friction between Mac Jones and Bill Belichick last year, not just quality of play, but Mac Jones often made his feelings known on the field. There were some reports that and again, you can't really believe anything that comes out of New England because it's not like Belichick is actually giving anyone anything. But there were some reports that the team, perhaps the coaches, Belichick himself, were pretty upset that Mac Jones turned outside the organization for advice and counsel during the season. That's not really something that, generally speaking, in New England under the tenure of Bill Belichick, they're comfortable with. So that might have been an issue. But I also just think that Mac Jones is, at least at this point, of the caliber of player who is just he should always be available. I'm sure he's available. He's not. Like they have a moment right now where they have a quarterback on a rookie contract, but Mac Jones is not, he's fine. Like he's done nothing to put himself in the, he's never had a game that is the equal of like Tua's best games. He's done nothing to put himself among first, second, third year quarterbacks. He's done nothing to put himself in that conversation with like Herbert and Tua and Burrow. He's just not there. So sure, he should be available. I can't what the hell would the market be? Again, we talked about it with Lamar. Atlanta should be interested. Atlanta should be interested in any quarterback who isn't the quarterback that they have right now, I think, which is maybe that's a little bit unfair, but they didn't trust him to throw the ball last year. He wasn't a stellar pro prospect coming out of college. And I don't, there's just not many teams that should be falling over themselves to give you anything significant for Mac Jones. They can't recoup the draft value that they spent on Jones. So I'm sure he's available. That wouldn't surprise me at all. He is the sort of quarterback where you could just bring in I don't know, how different would the Patriots look if Andy Dalton was their quarterback? If some, fringy, is he a starter, is he a backup veteran was their quarterback? I don't think they would get a dramatically different result. And I don't think the ceiling for Mac Jones is extraordinary. So yeah, I think he ought to be available.
Yeah, he should be. And the good thing is they did get rid of Brian Hoyer, but he did sign somewhere else. And I don't know if I know anybody that has stolen more money from the NFL for doing absolutely nothing than Brian Hoyer. But
Chase Daniels made a fair amount of money.
Yeah, but he's another one.
But it's an elite club. You're right. It's an elite club, and Hoyer is in it.
Stealing money and not worth a damn. What's that? Yeah, with the Raiders. Yeah. The Jets now. So apparently they tried to get rid of Zach Wilson. They couldn't get rid of Zach Wilson. So, and it's understandable. The kid has maturity issues and all that kind of stuff, and obviously the cap hit and everything else that goes with it. And I know that Rodgers apparently is his idol or something like that. Yeah. But in the big picture now, because the Jets are kind of limited in the cap, because they're waiting for this deal to be made, and they also lost Mike White to the Dolphins, have the Jets also put themselves in a really bad position? Because if something does happen to Rodgers, they really don't have a reliable number two. They have a very unreliable and immature number two at this point in time. So it's not so much that they can't get rid of him. It's also put them in a bad position. Do you agree?
Yeah, I fully agree. It is unquestionably an issue. He hasn't really shown us anything extraordinary. He's one of those like get all the tools, no toolbox kind of guys, right? Like you can see flashes, you can see individual plays. Usually, it's when stuff breaks down, where Zach Wilson can make a throw and he gets to show off his arm or he gets to show off his mobility. But play to play, like just keeping an offense on script, he has not shown any ability to do it. Not only is QB1 an issue right now until they deal for Rodgers, but QB2 is definitely an issue. Like you're not, if something happens to Rodgers and you have to throw Zach Wilson into the fire and he's not substantially better and he doesn't take the game more seriously and he doesn't take his position more seriously going into next year, you can't win. I mean, you can win an occasional game, but you're not going to make a deep playoff run. You're not going to, Rodgers goes down.
Most of your backup quarterbacks aren't going to save your season anyways. 99% of the time, it's not going to happen.
Right.
Once in a while, a Tom Brady will come off the bench and shock the world after Drew Bledsoe or Jeff Hostetler or
and
Nick
like Brock Purdy never happens, right? Like Brock Purdy happens once a decade, something like that. But you are just looking for a guy like, let's go 5-4. Like something happens to Rodgers, let's go 5-4. I don't think you can do that with Zach Wilson.
Yeah, that's the problem. For at least you want your backup to try to keep things afloat, and to me, that's where it falls off the cliff. Because of course I'm not asking for a savior. There's no saviors pretty much as a backup in the NFL, but you want somebody at least that can keep you somewhat competitive.
Yep.
That's where I think it really runs out of gas for them. Tyreek Hill, he was on a podcast with two of his former teammates from Kansas City. And he talked up about how he can't wait to take on Kansas City and he'll be their biggest enemy that day and all that kind of stuff. But he also said something very interesting, but I don't know if it's newsworthy, because he says, I want to play 3 more years, finish out my 4-year contract with the Dolphins, and then I want to retire and go professionally into gaming, which, by the way, is genius, because that's going to be an enormous,
yes.
What's it called, the genre or business and everything down the line. I'm invested in a lot of crypto companies that are into gaming, and I'm expecting gaming to be an enormous thing in the next bull run in crypto as it is. So I'm with him on that. But I say it's not newsworthy just in case Dolphin fans were thinking forever. If you think his age and you think 3 more seasons, that's probably when you want to get off the gravy train as it is. So
yes.
3 more years is probably where you're going to get the most out of Tyreek Hill. In the
3 years is also an eternity in the NFL, right? Like that is forever in the NFL.
Amen.
So I wouldn't, this isn't baseball. Like we're not signing 9-year contracts here. We're not signing 10-year contracts here. Like the whole league could change. The whole hierarchy at receiver across the league could change in 3 years. Like Dolphins fans should be, like the Dolphins can win. Like the Dolphins can win that division, and the Dolphins can be playing in the AFC title game this year. Like that is a thing. And you should be entirely about, not to say that you aren't, but everybody should be entirely about 2023. And I, from a fantasy perspective, I always manage a dynasty roster that way, right? I just care about this year, and it serves you well, because you always have people in the league who are prioritizing, 3 years out, 4 years out. But it's an etch-a-sketch league, and it just shakes itself each year, and it's a blank slate, and we have no idea what the NFL is going to look like in October, and we sure as shit don't know what it is going to look like in 3 years. So like, I hear that, and I'm like, well, that's forever, and who knows? Like if he's still playing at an extremely high level, and again, that's hard because he's been doing it for a while. But if he is, money can change minds. So I wouldn't worry about that a whole lot. It sounds like what you have is a receiver who is all in for the next 3 seasons. And you could just go win a Super Bowl right now. So I'd feel that Tyreek Hill is the least of the Dolphins' problems.
All right. Finally, we'll wrap it up with this. John Elway, interesting, kind of steps away completely from the Broncos. And this is one hell of a parting of ways, let's just say, because all of the Broncos' success ever is attributed to John Elway as a player and then as an executive. I know, he's like Michael Jordan, that he struggled to find the great quarterback, and Michael struggles to find actually put together a good team, period. I know that Elway struggled to find that young quarterback, right? But he did get Peyton Manning, and he did build one defense after another, actually, and left them with a very good defense as it is, and won the championship. Obviously, those were explosive years that Manning had before the neck injury, took over. This is kind of an interesting time for Broncos fans, because you really don't know what's going to happen, because anything that isn't involved with Elway means you haven't had success.
Yeah,
Crazy.
that's actually a really interesting way to frame it. I was going to say this is absolutely, without question, one of the greatest single franchise careers that we've seen in sport. Right? To win it multiple times as a player.
Only Jerry West, dude. Only Jerry West.
And then to do it with the same franchise as an executive and as a key decision making executive. You're totally right about the quarterback position. It's been a rogues gallery, basically since Peyton Manning, right? You can throw Trevor Siemian in there. I'm trying to name him off the top of my head. It's like Siemian, and obviously the worst Russell Wilson season.
Listen, I don't know if you know this. The screwed up part for the Broncos, their entire history, AFL and all, they've never drafted a quarterback. Ever.
It's just
they traded for
just
Craig
wild.
Morton. They traded for Craig Morton. They traded for John Elway. They traded for Peyton Manning. All of their great quarterbacks have been traded for. They never, ever drafted their quarterbacks. Ever, bro. How screwed up is that? From the AFL till now, the Broncos, it's not just an Elway thing. No general manager in Bronco history has ever found a franchise quarterback, bro.
And they are so taught, like the Russell Wilson thing could just go any number of directions. He's been one of the best quarterbacks in the league, so it's hard to say that he can never get back there. But if he's no better going forward,
but he's got a better chance because you traded for him.
He does. There'd be no hope. He'd be Paxton Lynch if they drafted
if you drafted him. Forget about it, bro. You're done.
Absolutely.
It's over. The Broncos drafted you. You're guaranteed to fail.
I think I don't know if he wants to do it. I think Elway would be good on TV too. It's just a remarkable career, and you're so right to put they sniffed the Super Bowl in the 70s, but outside of that, every good thing associated with that franchise has involved John Elway. You're totally right.
Right. And by the way, I was around for that Super Bowl. They got crushed. The Orange Crush got crushed. They got there, and it was it was one of those, you got there, but you really weren't in their class. It was just one of those kind, like what used to happen, by the way, to the Broncos with John Elway in the early days.
Right. Totally.
He'd get there, and then the Redskins and the Niners would just absolutely wallop their asses because, okay, they were great in the AFC, and you did the fun bunch, not the fun bunch. What was it? The Three Amigos and all that crap. And it just wasn't going to get you over the top because you didn't have the defense, you didn't have the running game and all that. And then eventually came Terrell Davis in that running game, and then the whole world.
The Broncos' history is kind of instructive in some ways, right? Because they were a punchline when I was growing up, a little bit in the way that, the Bills being unable to win a Super Bowl became a punchline, right? The Broncos were that team that just could not break through. When they got there, they got stomped. Other times they would lose in absolutely heartbreaking fashion before they could get there. They were that punchline until they broke through. So there's hope for all those teams all the time.
No doubt. All right. Follow him on Twitter at Andy Behrens. Catch him doing his thing here every week with our Sports Grill, Miami Dolphins, and NFL Report. Andy, as always, thank you, my friend. Enjoy your vacation. We'll catch up next
back
week.
To the beach.
That's it. There you go, baby.
Cheers, bro.
Enjoy it. Later, baby. You got it. That is Andy Behrens. And by the way, we've got the boxing matches coming up now, right? I think it was. They're you can see the pay-per-views usually over at Sports Grill, man. So usually they got pay-per-views going, UFC, boxing matches. Monday through Wednesday, they got specials going on. Today, kids eat free. When the adults buy an entree, you could take the sauces home with you now at Sports Grill. 8 great locations. They opened up the Doral location right off of 87th Avenue. It's about a mile north of the Doral Golf Course. So you go about a mile north on 87th Avenue. You'll see it there on your right side. It is gorgeous, giant, and beautiful. Check it out. That's your Sports Grill, Miami Dolphins, and NFL report.
This is the Big O Show.